to see your face. Okay, well, I'm going to begin on time because there's so much in this session today that I want to share with you guys. I am going to continue us on our journey of the Yoga Sutras. I think all of you are here knowing that. If you didn't know that, this is what we're doing. And there's a few of you that are joining today that haven't been with us throughout, a lot in the last year. So let me give a little bit of background. In 2023, we went through book 1 of the Yoga Sutras. And our approach is kind of one at a time. Sometimes a couple of them pair nicely and we'll do 2 at a time. But my aim for this year in 2024 is to go through them again one at a time. Conveniently, there are 53 sutras in book 2. So if we do 1 a week, we'll get there easily, because I usually do combine a couple of them here and there. So we're gonna start today with book 2. Book 2, for background, is called Sadhana Pada. What we did in book 1 was really get an overview of, it's called the portion on contemplation. So the aim of yoga, which is to cease the fluctuations of our mind, and how to do that. So there was lots of discussion of how to use the breath, how to use the mind, how to use the thoughts. And we're going to shift today and we're going to move into book 2, which is about how to actually practice yoga. So everybody on here has done some physical practice of yoga with us at the studio. So you know that part. But there's so much more. And that's what we're going to start to peel away the layers of this year as we go through the Yoga Sutras. So I want to start just by reading what's in this translation, in Swami Satchidananda's translation. If you have the book, you can follow along. If you don't have the book, just listen. I'll make sure I share what's in here in a way that's accessible, even if you don't have a copy of the book. So the first sutra, 2.1 in book 2, says, in English, accepting pain as help for purification, study of spiritual books, and surrender to the Supreme Being constitute yoga in practice. Whoa. It's not exactly a good sales pitch for yoga. So wait, what does it say again? Accepting pain, studying, and surrendering. This is yoga. So I'm grateful that all of you have done some yoga before, and this isn't your first intro, because you might run away in the opposite direction. But we're going to look at what this means a little bit more closely, and hopefully, as we move through this, it won't seem so terrifying, or unappealing might be the word, unappealing. So one at a time, the word tapah, which is the Sanskrit word for pain and purification. This word tapas we use in our physical practice of yoga. If we're teaching a hot class, it's the heat of the practice, which generates discomfort, certainly, and purification. So we can relate to that kind of pain from our physical practice in terms of just the experience that we have of moving our body and strengthening our body, not from a place of like extreme discomfort. Satchidananda even says in this book, there's tapas as a self-discipline, and then there's also aversion that some people take to an extreme of self-mortification, and that's not what the Yoga Sutras are promoting. What we're saying, the Yoga Sutras are saying, is some discipline is good. So specifically, he says on page 79, I'm going to read this quote from the description by Swami Satchidananda. He says, Such acceptance of pain makes the mind steady and strong. Although it is easy to give pain to others, it is hard to accept without returning it. Such self-discipline obviously cannot be practiced in our meditation rooms, but only in our daily lives as we relate to other people. So he's talking about the self-discipline of being able to be in discomfort or pain. And in this particular moment, he's talking about just even like interactions with humans, we suffer and we experience pain. And what I love about what he says here is the yoga isn't just happening when you get on your mat, right? It's happening every time we interact with another human being or have experiences in the world. And so what we're learning, what we're practicing, our sadhana, is to be with the pain, if you will, and relate to it in a way that's beneficial as opposed to suffering, right? Because we can't avoid pain. Lots of teaching traditions teach us this, but we can relate to it in a different way. And so every time we come on our mat and we hold our warrior two, and it's longer than we want, or we sit in chair longer than we want, we're learning to relate to the experience and be with it. And some days we get out, some days we can't handle it, some days we need to take care of ourselves. So it's not black and white, is what I love about these teachings. It's like this is a practice that we do on an ongoing basis to learn how to be with all of these things that happen to us all day long. So that's tapas. The second thing in here is the study of spiritual books. So study. I like study, but not everybody does. And specifically, Svadhyaya is spiritual teachings. What I love that Swami Satchidananda says in here, I don't know if I'll find the page easily to quote it, but he says it doesn't matter what books you're studying, right? It could be the Yoga Sutras, it could be the Bhagavad Gita, it could be the Bible, it could be the Quran. But what we're being invited into is we don't have to figure it all out by ourselves, right? The experiences that we have as humans are ancient. And a lot of people have spent a lot of time experiencing these things and working with other teachers to learn how to be with what is. And so when we study scripture, or teachings from other beings, we can gain insight that's larger than our own experience. Well, that's why we do this, right? Like, I don't want to figure it out all on my own. I don't want to feel alone on the journey. And the word yoga means union. And it, there's so many ways of defining this, union of mind and body through the breath. But ultimately, it's union with something bigger than us, right? We start to realize, like, we're not the center of the universe, right? There are other humans, and there might even be something out there bigger than us in our awareness. And if we can surrender, which is another word that we hate in our culture, it seems to mean we're losing when we surrender. But when we give up the need to be in charge, there's freedom. So the surrender to what is called Ishvara, or a supreme being, is a way to find liberation from having to figure it all out and having to just be in charge of everything all the time, right? I mean, most of you guys are in charge of something in your life, and you know how exhausting that is, like having to do the things that you're in charge of on an ongoing basis. Like, I feel like my human responsibilities are enough that I don't necessarily also want to have to be responsible for understanding the nature of everything. Like, I'm going to trust somebody else to help me on that path, whether it's teachers that are in these books, or it's what I learned from my meditation, or giving up the need to be in control. So, does anybody have any questions or comments before I lead us into a meditation to kind of work with this? Okay. So the practice I'm going to offer us today is not any different than what you may have done in the past, or what we do if you've been coming to these classes. But I'm going to ask you to input a little bit of extra tapas today, a little bit of extra discipline, turning over your will to the practice. And there's no way for me as a teacher or anybody else to know what you're doing in your practice. And I often invite you to do your own practice. I'm going to invite you to just be in the discipline of a very simple breath practice, regardless of what you might usually prefer. All right, so the discipline of doing the meditation and sitting in stillness is part of the path. And it doesn't need to be a self-mortification thing where, you sit for 3 hours every day and, self-flagellate if you aren't good at it. But especially if you've been practicing for a while, sitting upright away from the back of your chair or away from the pillows on your bed is part of what I'm going to invite us into today. Just a little bit of extra tapas. So with that, wherever you are, I'm going to go ahead and mute everybody so we can have some relative silence. Is the volume of the background music okay for you guys to know that the tech hasn't gone out? Okay. All right, once you're situated and sitting a little more upright than you might on a regular basis, you're welcome to close your eyes if that's safe for you. Begin by sensing into your physical body. So I invite you to just sense into whatever is contacting your support, so your feet or your seat. Part of the practice is just to trust that you're supported, to surrender a little bit to that support. Perhaps you notice in your own physical body that there's a little resistance to even the physical support that's here. Right, resistance shows up physically. Sometimes that's easier to notice than our other resistance. Surrender to the support and stay alert. Surrender isn't a giving up or a giving in. It's a kind of trust that offers safety. Notice your breath as it is. Notice any inclination or impulse to change your breath. release that control as well. Can you observe and be without needing to change it? Here and maybe out there in your relationships as well. Observe your breath without judgment. Letting go of any sense of not enough or I don't know. Just watching. Just this, just watching the breath. Notice any impulse to get busy or do something. Surrender the need to do. Of your posture and your stillness is creating discomfort. Can you just observe it and drop the resistance, exchanging it for just a curiosity? What does it actually feel like? And how does it change as you watch? wanders too far down a rabbit hole of thoughts. Surrender to the practice. One more time, nice big full clearing of your space. And let it out. And then when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Be with your fellow yogis. Any insights, comments, revelations? I have one last thing I'd like to read if there's no comments. I don't want to cut anybody off though. Just give you a moment. You guys are good. All right, so at the end of this section, it's on page 83 if you do happen to have the book. I'll read it out loud. It's the second to last paragraph. I love what he says in here about the word mine, not mind with a D, but mine with an E. So listen carefully. He says, be like the mother who receives a soul, nourishes it for 9 months, and then lets it come out into the world. If the mother were to always keep the baby in her womb, what would happen? There would be great pain. Once something has ripened, it should be passed on. So, dedication is true yoga. Say, I am thine, all is thine, thy will be done. Mine, with an E, mine binds. Thine liberates. If you drop minds all over, they will undermine your life and blow up in your face. But if you change all the minds to thine, you will always be safe. Let go, yogis. Let go. All right, well, thank you for joining me. We'll be back next Sunday. And we'll do Sutra 2.2, which is very short. If you don't have this book, it's like this first chapter is like full of gold, and I could only share a tiny bit, but there's so much gold in the first chapter of book 2, so you're invited to track it down and read it if you haven't. All right, well, you guys have a good Sunday.
Thank you, Kate.
Namaste.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you, Kate.
You're so welcome.
That's on.